Mason families, we're so excited that we've just completed our first month of school back. You know, this summer we talked to a lot of families about whether we would be in school or not be in school, and it's just exciting to see that we've actually been able to come together to do this and to actually complete our first 4 weeks of school. Now, during that 4 weeks, we have learned a lot. We have learned about the importance not only of physical safety and all the protocols that we put in place, but we've also learned a lot about just the emotional safety of our kids and how this entire situation that we're in right now has an emotional toll. It plays an emotional toll on not just our students, but our staff and our families. And one of the ways that we're seeing that play out right now is specifically at our high school with our quarantining process. In that quarantine process, it's not something that Mason City Schools has come up with. This is actually directions from CDC, the state level, down to the local level. And we're required to follow those. That is something that's a legal obligation that we have to do. And the reason we have to do that is because that's the directive from our local health department. And they have been great working with us closely to minimize the impact of the quarantine. But even with that, it's still having a big impact on our system. And we understand that when our students are quarantined at home, they're healthy. They don't have symptoms. And they're missing their friends, they're missing their lessons, they're trying to stay connected to their teacher, but that causes some stress on the system as well. And so we understand that that's not a physical safety issue, but that is an emotional. And so we want to do our best to share with you what we're doing to address that. As our team comes together every day to review the data, what we have noticed very clearly, and you have also seen this in our weekly updates as we've shared our data transparently with our community, is that we have more quarantines happening at our high school. And there is reason for that. We are not surprised by that. That's something actually our health experts told us would most likely be the pattern over time because they see that happening more in students at the high school level. One thing that our team has noticed as we review the data daily is that we have noticed that for every one positive case that has come into our high school, it impacts about 15 students, and that's where it's stressing on the system. Remember, we have to follow a 6-foot, 15-minute protocol. That's not something we've made up, it's something we're following and implementing. And when we do that, as students go from class to class, every student they've sat next to within that 6-foot distance gets quarantined. And that causes an emotional impact on the student as well as the teacher in the class. And we recognize that is the problem that we are trying to solve. So what we've also watched over time is that that spread is not happening in our buildings. At Mason City Schools, we are taking a proactive approach to engage key leaders from around the state to help us to possibly redefine what quarantine means inside of public schools. Schools have a very controlled environment, and our data is showing very clearly that our students who are in quarantine are not showing symptoms. So one of the ways that we're trying to address that to minimize the impact on our students and on our school system is we're trying to relook at that. So I have been fortunate enough to engage in conversations with Governor DeWine, with his office, with public officials from around our area. Also, the Warren County Health Department has been engaged in conversations, Children's Hospital, and we're bringing people together to begin looking at the data and say, could we redefine what quarantine looks like in school? Since the environment is controlled, students are wearing their masks throughout the entire building, and we've created that 3-foot distance, which we've all determined based on research is a safe distance with masks. So that is what we're trying to do proactively and bring people together to make those decisions. If we get down that road and we find that it's a dead end, that people will not be willing at the state level or CDC level to change that so that we can make that change at the 3-foot level instead of in the 6-foot distance quarantine, what we will do is then consider more of a hybrid approach. The hybrid approach, remember, is where 50% of our students come every other day to class. And it allows us to spread out our seats and so that we can move past this quarantining issue that we're having. We want to exhaust every other possibility first because we also understand that when we decide to go to a hybrid model, it impacts all of our families. And we would look at just one building if that's what was necessary. So for example, right now the main issue with quarantine is at our high school. So we would look at our high school as a possibility to move toward a hybrid model. As we work with our county officials to contact trace, what we have noticed, the pattern of the data is showing us that there is not spread that is happening within our school. The protocols that we have in place with mask and 3-foot distancing, it's working. What we are noticing is that positive cases are actually coming from outside, from events, social events that are happening outside of school, and bringing those cases into our school. And again, that's leading to this quarantine problem that we're having. The whole process of addressing COVID, whether it's the physical safety or emotional safety or the logistics, it has a big impact on our system as a whole, both financially and the resources that we have to allocate to address those issues. So as you've probably heard me talk about, we have invested almost $2 million in making sure that we have safe environments in preparation for returning to school. That's a big financial impact that COVID has caused. We also have other impacts with our resources. For example, at our high school, when we have one positive case come into our school and we get that report, our administrators are spending most of the day tracing as quickly as possible and as accurately as possible all the students that have been impacted by that. That's a full day process for our high school administrators that we're using them just to contact trace to make sure we get that right so we have the minimal impact on our students and our families. There's also an impact on our teachers. Over 80% of our teachers at the high school have students that are in quarantine. And so as our teachers care about our kids, they're teaching the in-person students, but they also have students that are at home and they're trying to keep them connected as well the best that we can. That causes all kinds of logistical challenges when you have that many students at home and you never know who the next student's going to be in your classroom that gets quarantined. So there's not like a predictability to that. It is a very last minute, and so it causes a stress on the system as that process is going. And that's why it's important for us to find a solution to the quarantine problem that's happening, at least at our high school at this point in time. We have heard from many of our families who are online learners who would like to move to in-person now that they've seen that we've been in and we've completed 4 weeks and they're realizing the online experience is not exactly what they were hoping it to be. And we understand that and we're very empathetic and we wish that we could change that quickly. We also have families that are in person that have said, hey, I would like to be online. And a lot of that's being driven by the quarantine problem that we're having. And so we hear that as well and we want to be empathetic. But here's the reality. It's not that easy to just switch people from online to in-person or in-person to online. That is a staffing decision. That's why we were asking so far back in summer for people to make that early commitment because we have staffing decisions that go behind that. All of our students are tied to staff members who have already been given a full load, and so you can't just move those back and forth. There's also financial implications to when we make those kind of decisions. So as you know, Mason City Schools has always been a district that serves and cares for our families and always wants to get to an answer of yes. And if we could say yes, we'd say, sure, let's move you back and forth. But the reality is, at this point in the game, we can't move people back and forth. And that's why we've been very clear from the beginning that you're making a semester decision. And we understand that's difficult. We get it. And soon enough, the next semester will be coming up and you'll have that same opportunity to make a different decision. And then we'll be able to hopefully make that bridge smooth for you to move from one option to the other. As we come to the close of our 4th week and as we look ahead and we plan ahead, I hope these updates have been helpful for you to understand more of the context. It's our way of being very transparent and saying we don't have all the answers figured out, but we're working towards solutions and we'll continue to work towards solutions. I will leave you with this. I was talking to my brother-in-law and their family. They live in Portland. And Portland has had a lot of different challenges that they're facing, but one is with their school systems, they've not been able to open, so they're going online learning. And in the first 2 days when they launched online learning, they had a lot of system things that were challenging. It's a community just like ours, but they ran into some systems challenges. And then the fire started in their community, and so people had to evacuate, so they had to cancel the next 4 days of learning. And when I hear that, and I hear some of the frustrations and sadness from their kids, talking to my boys about just, they want to be back in school and they watch our kids here in school, it reminds me of how fortunate we are and how I don't take any day for granted. Every day we get together, whether it's on the field with athletics or in the classroom and learning or online and connecting with your friends, it's a great day that we continue to move forward together. So if you're out there, and I know this is a stressful time, and you need additional support, your family, your student, please reach out to us. We want to be here to serve you and serve our community.